Welcome to Beer Untapped with Perry Miller, the podcast. I'm joined by Seth.
Hey, welcome, guys. Thanks for finding us on the internet.
Now, these shows originally aired on Brookings Radio, but now they're all here for your enjoyment. I hope you like it.
There you go. Sit back, enjoy the show, relax. Let us know if you want to see anything on future shows. As we said, this comes out live in the Brookings area, but enjoy this archive episode.
Beer Untapped with Perry Miller. Welcome to Beer Untapped with Perry Miller. Thanks to discoveries made by a University of South Dakota anthropology professor and others, there's a new craft beer with ties to ancient South America. Matt Sayre is assistant anthropology professor in Vermilion, and his work in Peru formed some of the basis for Wari Ale from Off Color Brewing and the Field Museum of Chicago. Sayre says they discovered the Wari people were making beer from the seeds of the Peruvian pepper tree.
We found moye, which in English is called the Peruvian pepper tree. And so that is still made into chicha, which is the word for beer in South America, or aca in the Quechua language. So we know that they made a beer as well out of this kind of spicy drupe, which is a fruit that hangs on the end of the tree.
During an archaeology trip to Peru in 2002, Sayre found these large seeds he'd never seen before, and it appears they were using them as the primary ingredient for beer.
Because we had found thousands of these that had been put in close to boiling water and then dumped out because they'd had all this residue washed off them. So we could tell that they'd been cooked. And there were piles just of thousands of these seeds by themselves. So that leads us to think that they were probably making just some of this moye beer, chicha de moye, by itself, in addition to probably mixing it with the corn as well.
Later excavations by others led to the discovery of an ancient pepper seed brewery.
I was part of an earlier excavation near the Wari capital at a site called Conchapata that was really the first project to ever document finding moye at an archaeological site and writing it up. The site where they found the huge brewery is called Cerro Baúl, which is a hilltop site on the Pacific coast in southern Peru. And the really interesting thing about that is it seems like it's a site that existed right at the border between the Wari and Tiwanaku Empire. And one of the interesting things we found over time is that the Tiwanaku did not seem to drink this type of spicy beer. And they probably made their beer out of corn and quinoa. So we may be looking at a way that people differentiated themselves based on food.
That ancient brewery was probably used just for a short time, perhaps to brew beer for a major celebration.
So it doesn't look like it was producing all the time for markets, but it looks like they could have produced enough beer for, let's say, 1,000 people during a big event. And in this particular case, a lot of the things were smashed afterwards. So it may have been pretty rowdy party.
The Wari people lived in Peru more than 1,000 years ago. They were a high-altitude agricultural people that left behind ruins and decorative pottery that depicts much about their culture. More on this unique beer when Beer Untapped continues. Welcome back to Beer Untapped with Perry Miller. We're talking ancient beers and specifically the work of USD anthropologist Matt Sayre in Peru. The seeds he discovered that were used to make beer have an interesting taste.
So that fruit, the moye fruit, the Peruvian pepper tree, it produces a drupe which looks just like a peppercorn, and it's both kind of sweet and spicy. And so it does have a little bit of a pepper kick to it, and it also has some sugars in there, so it's somewhat spicy. So it's a pretty different taste. It can be mixed into the regular corn beer as well.
That tree also grows along the west coast of the U.S., and Matt tried his hand at making its seeds into a beer.
When I brewed it as a graduate student, I just went out, because I was in graduate school in California, I just went outside and collected a bunch of it off the trees there, and we tried some different recipes that colleagues in Peru had recommended to us. Let's just say that the version I produced was not very tasty.
The ancient beer would likely have been quite low in alcohol, probably a little funky and slightly tart from the wild fermentation. The new Wari Ale from Off Color Brewing uses the pepper seeds and corn for a modern interpretation.
And I've heard that it's certainly a little bit of spicy, but also fairly sweet. So it's been described like a shandy, where you have a little bit of a lemonade type flavor to it as well. So it's certainly seems like, if they have some popularity, maybe you could sell in the summer and people would enjoy having it in a backyard barbecue.
Matt hasn't yet gotten to try the beer since it's not distributed to South Dakota, but he hopes to get a taste soon. So do I. Now let's check in with Drew Eklund at the Brookings Liquor Store and some beers we can taste. What's new on tap, Drew?
From Bank Brewing Company, Hop Lab Orange, 20 cents an ounce. This is the latest in the hop series featuring Simcoe hops, giving it an earthy, tropical flavor. Slightly piney, and like Bank's other Hop Lab entries, it's got a distinct freshness to it. Good stuff.
New packaged beers include several from one of the country's top craft brewers, now available in South Dakota.
Oscar Blues is here. If you haven't heard of Oscar Blues, they're a highly rated, reputable brewery with locations in Longmont, Colorado, and Brevard, North Carolina. First, from Oscar Blues, we have Dale's Pale Ale, $9.99 a six-pack. This was Oscar Blues' first beer. Flavors of grapefruit, orange, and lemon. Finishes with a malty, sweet, piney, and floral notes. Next, we have Old Chub, Scottish-style ale. Also $9.99 a six-pack. Smoky, sweet, and boozy. You can definitely feel the heat of the 8% ABV. And then last but not least, we have 1050 Imperial Stout, $13.99 a four-pack. This is a huge, complex beer, and it's worth every penny. It's one of the best non-barrel aged stouts I've ever had. It's an amazing beer.
Finally, craft beer fans should raise a pint this Sunday to honor the birth of a man who was vital to the craft beer world, Michael Jackson, the beer hunter.
27 March 1942 is when he was born. He actually passed in August of 2007. He was a journalist. He was kind of renowned for documenting some of the things that hadn't been formally documented, maybe some of the pub culture, some of the beer information, some of the beer styles. He took through great effort and actually became some beautiful works on the adventure that beer of what beer is in these different regions. And I think one of his most notable works was published early in his career, and then it later amended. It was the World Guide to Beer. I think it was really published in '77. Some of these are out of print. We were just talking. Some of them are hard to get their hands on, but he's almost universally seen as maybe the champion of beer styles, starting in the '70s and '80s.
Thank you, Seth Cook from Wooden Legs Brewing, there for that reminder about Michael Jackson's birthday. And we're not talking about the singer, obviously. That's it for this week's show. Until next time, drink local and drink responsibly. Thank you for listening to this archived edition of Beer Untapped with Perry Miller. Feel free to listen to other episodes, and if there's anything you'd like us to talk about on a future show, please let us know. Thanks again.